afternoon, folks. We're going to start our webinar here in just about a minute. We got folks still signing in, so we want to make sure they all have a chance to get on before we start. So grab that last cup of coffee or bite of lunch or whatever, and we'll get going here in about a minute. Thanks. Okay, let's get going here, folks. Thank you again for joining us today for our Mailing Hub webinar, Personalization, I'm Talking to You. And today we're going to have as our speaker, Summer Gould, from who's the president of Comm Incorporated in Santee, California, near San Diego. Summer, believe it or not, has spent 28 years helping clients achieve improved direct mail marketing results. She's active in several industry organizations. As a board member for Printing Industries Association San Diego and SD Direct. In the past, she served as a panel speaker for the Association of Marketing Service Providers. Remember that, MFSA, ANSP, EPICOM, back in those days. She is a blogger for Target Marketing Magazine with the popular Direct Mail for the Modern Marketer. She also writes for Forbes and Comm, and she writes for Mailers Hub blogs as well. ID Alliance chose her for induction into the Soderstrom Society in 2016, recognizing her contributions to advance the graphic communications industry. In her spare time, which I can't believe she has much of, Summer enjoys hiking and fishing and reading and crafting and going to the movies. So with all that said, I'd like to welcome Summer to talk about personalization. Summer, take it away.
Thanks, Leo. Hi, everybody. Welcome. All right, so here's a little bit about contacting me if you wish to connect. Email, Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm all over the place, so feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. So a little overview on what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is personalization, why we use it, software, how to use it, data, how it can go wrong, and it can go really wrong, quality control, and CCPA. So let's get started. So what is personalization? Is it a name, an offer, or more? Originally, sure, you could get away with using just a name and calling that personalized. Then it was cool to use a name with personalized graphics, you know, the words in the sand type situation. And then we moved on to personalized offers. But now it can and should be really more. You can personalize a mail piece in a variety of ways to not only get attention, but to drive response. The objective of personalization is to make people feel as though the offer is special to them and therefore it's irresistible. Personalization now should include, but is not limited to, coupons, images, copy, maps, offers, colors, and more. Make each person feel as though that special offer is just for them. When you do, it leads to a better response. So why use it? The simple answer is because it's going to make you more money. Why? Well, in an InfoTrends study question, does customization or personalization of direct mail make you more likely to open and read it? People said at 29%, yes, much more likely. And 55% said yes, a little more likely. That's a grand total of 84% of the people finding personalized mail to be positive. That's enormous. So with numbers like that, you need to be personalizing mail for your customers. First and foremost, you'll make money, but there are really three other things that drive why personalization is important. First of all, customers like it. With all the technology out now, there's really no reason why you can't personalize mail, so just do it. Recipients have stated in multiple studies, not just the InfoTrends one that I mentioned, that they pay more attention to mail when it's personalized. because it makes them feel special. Better targeting. With personalization, you are able to target people with the right message. Using information that's collected in the data, you can create custom offers that appeal directly to the person based on purchase history or other factors that you know about them. And lastly, better response. Since recipients like it and you're better able to target them with the right offer, you're going to get a better response rate. And really, personalization is not hard. Many times, companies shy away from complex personalization because they're worried about getting it wrong. Don't let fear stop you. PFL just published a study on marketing and found that when direct mail is personalized, the average response rates improve significantly with a 62% increase. And the ROI of multi-channel campaigns that include personalized direct mail improves significantly with an 80% increase. So integrated and personalized direct mail is the second most effective marketing channel. Are you personalizing yet? Now, there are great softwares out there that can help you control the variable data and ensure that the correct information is on each piece. There are a few listed here: Fusion Pro, XMPie, Design Merge, PrintJotMail, JetLetter, and there are many, many more. They basically all do the same thing, but they have different specialties within it. So check each one of them out and find out which one works best for your needs. Basically, you want to evaluate the ease of use, functionality, the support you're going to get when you have issues, and of course, price. Now, if I were to ask this group, what would interest you and capture your attention with a direct mail piece, I guarantee that I would get a lot of different answers. All of us have opinions and interests, some stronger than others, that drive us. The power of direct mail is that we can create individually personalized pieces to increase response rates. Tom will get a unique piece that interests him, and Sue gets a different one that interests her. The best part is the pieces will look totally different with variable images, colors, and more, but will still be a part of the same mailing and qualify for discounted postage rates. So here we have an example of variable data in action. This is a card with a personalized dollar amount. Sorry, I lost my place here. Their name, expiration date, and that's all on the front of the card. I've obviously removed some information here so you don't know who this is. And then over here on the back of the card, you can see that there's more personalization. So we're getting both sides of the card. Of course, we have to have our little disclaimer about what they're not allowed to do. Everybody needs that in there, right? But pretty much the information that is on the back complements the information that's on the front. And then to go along with this card, we have a letter. Now this letter is personalized and the matching card is affixed there towards the bottom with fugitive glue. There are several variables here on the letter. We have the address block that shows through the window, the name, the dollar amount, and earned period, because there's a certain amount of time frame that they earn these points, expiration date, store name, and there's even a special PS line, so everybody gets their own personalized PS. And that really, as it all comes together, when the person receives it, it makes the mail feel really special to them. And that creates significantly increased response rates. And honestly, customers look forward to getting mail like this. Now, the next example are a couple of magazines. So this first magazine over here on the left is using a fun hologram. And then it's personalized with my name, my company, my location. And it's also personalized throughout the magazine to help me stay engaged and continue to read through it. And then the second one over here on the right uses personalization and texture. So that basketball actually feels like a real basketball. Super cool. I love feeling that. And using a combination of personalization and special coatings just enhances the direct mail piece and really helps drive response, which in turn adds value to what you're selling to your customers. Because when we can increase the response rates that they get, the more money they have to buy added on services that we're selling. So it's really a win-win for both you and your customer. Now we'll look at some ways that you can personalize direct mail. So first is gender. If you have a product or service that appeals differently to women than men, this is a great way to segment your offer. In many cases, women look at products and services very differently than men. So use that to your advantage with targeted pieces. Make sure your data on gender is correct because sending the wrong message can really make people angry. For instance, I received a mailer for a special suit tailoring and was referenced as Mr. Gould. Obviously, that was incorrect. I'm not a man. Next is past purchase or donation history. Use what is known about each person to personalize their offer. If they bought peanut butter, reference that when offering jelly. If they made a donation previously, note that donation amount and ask them if they can help with an increased amount this year. Now, you really need to make sure that you make logical associations between the past purchase and the current offer. Don't send me an offer for coffee when I bought tea because it might mean I don't like coffee. Next is reminders. If there is an average time use for a product or service, create incremental reminders to customers so that they will be reminded when they need to buy again. You can even include a coupon for another purchase. Of course, make sure that you're including an expiration date because you need to create that sense of urgency so you get them to respond quickly. And also be careful not to over-remind people because sending too much direct mail can really have a negative effect. Next is location. This can be used to entice people to join their neighbors and buy the same things. The keep up with the Joneses mentality. You can point out what others on the block have purchased and that they should not miss out. This also works well for events near them. So if you're trying to get a group of people in a certain area to go to an event. Images. The visual component of direct mail sets the mood and draws the recipient into the message. Getting the images that will appeal most to each person is very important. You may not need a different image for every person. You may be able to group them as like individuals based on the data that you have in hopes that they would all react in the same way. It just has to feel personalized to them. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that every single person is getting something different in your mailing. Next is maps or directions. So imagine wanting to get people to your customer's store for a sale. Not only is there a coupon on the mailer, but there's also a personalized map from their home to the store or to a special event. And this can work well for any location-based marketing. And it's really cool. When you get a mail piece that's giving you a personalized map on how to get there, it actually makes you take another look at the piece. Next is coupons. Provide a discount on a product or service that they have used before or one that goes along with something that they've purchased before. This can be a great incentive for somebody to try something new. You see that a lot nowadays because it really, really works. Next is call to action. Personalizing the calls to action help people respond. It gives the appearance of providing a special offer just for them. And when they feel special, they're more inclined to buy. And again, on the calls to action, you don't have to have, if your list is 50,000 people, you don't have to have 50,000 calls to action. You can group people together and limit your total number of calls to action and still draw some personalization in there. And lastly is copy. So personalized copy is more than just adding their name. It's adding information that you know about them, their history, their needs, and so on, that pulls them in and makes them take action. And use copy wisely to draw interest. You don't want to creep people out. You don't want to seem like you're stalking them. You just want to show them that you know what they need and you're helping them get it. And then just keep in mind that too much copy can be a problem, especially on a direct mail piece. So you can use the direct mail piece to draw them online if you want to give them more information, but you don't need to include too much copy on a mail piece. All right, so next is data. So the trick to doing all this personalization correctly is your data. You and your customers need to be collecting information about their customers and prospects in order to give them better offers. The better the offer, the less likely it will be considered junk mail and thrown away. So don't waste money sending direct mail to people that don't want it. The data is the gold mine. Treat it with the utmost care and constantly make changes to it. You can provide this service to your customers so they don't have to do it themselves. And you can make a little extra money. If you don't have much information in the data, start small. Look at the list of personalized options we just discussed and see what information that you do have and can use. There are profile services out there to help you learn more about your customers' customers. They can append psychographics and demographics and more to help create a personal profile for each person that you can then use to personalize the piece. And if you do use list profiling services, remember that the information is more of a generalization to categorize people. It's not information that you can use as a fact, because this can lead you to assume incorrectly what people like and dislike. So just keep that in mind. And we do use profiling quite a bit, so it is a good service. Now, personalization can be the catalyst to catapult your direct mail response rates to the next level. Personalization in direct mail marketing is a great way to get recipients' attention, and in our current climate, they really expect it. If their piece is just generic and it's not, calling to them in any way, they're just going to throw it away. And the more personalization you can use, the more responses that you're going to get. So are you convinced that personalization is the key to better ROI? I am. And if you want to start smaller to take some of the fear out of it, you can do that. Just make sure you don't get stuck in the mode of just using the name and calling that personalization. Build up your personalization with each mailing, incorporating more data and more complex variables. This gradual buildup will give you the confidence to keep getting more personal. All right, now let's talk about what can go wrong. And let's be honest, a lot can go wrong. And there's really two types of errors that happen most often, and that's with programming the job or something bad in the data. So when using personalization, you can send the wrong image, the wrong coupon, wrong maps, directions, call to action, copy, any of those things. And these are all errors that we as providers make relatively often. However, with QC procedures, we don't send them out incorrectly. And this is really a big problem if it does get sent out incorrectly. Not only is it a waste of money for your customers, but it can really make the people who receive them mad. And mad translates into people that go from somebody that's happy with your brand to somebody that's going to talk crap about you. And that's certainly not what we want for our customers. And honestly, the madder they are, the more people they tell, which is not a good thing. So you really must set QC procedures in place to find errors before they mail. Now, the other error issue that you can have is when the data is wrong. This can happen when multiple files are merged together or during a data entry error. These errors are hard for us to catch if the data was bad from the client. But if we are merging multiple files, we need to be careful to map the fields correctly. So in this example here, this is bad variable data. The wrong image was used based on the wrong gender code. So Megan, who's obviously not a man, got a man on a mountain bike when she should have gotten the woman on the mountain bike. And then the other side of the card was incorrect as well. That was also geared towards a man, so it had some specifics in there that wouldn't be relevant to Megan. So this was all bad, basically. And this should be caught in proofing stages, but when you're dealing with high quantities, sometimes things like this can be missed, especially if it's wrong information that came in the data from the customer. But we really have to work hard to try and find those things and eliminate as many errors as we can, not only for our sakes, but for the customer as well, because we want them to have a successful mailing and continue to use us. So now quality control. So obviously quality control is extremely important. And we have 5 ideas that we use on a regular basis here when we're processing variable data jobs. So we'll take a random sampling of the data and we'll output it to check each one. We'll have a supervisor double check the logic and the programming. We'll select specific criteria to check based on the complexity of the variables. So if there are several different images, we'll make sure that all of that is transferring through correctly, along with copy. And then we'll set our software to flag any errors for missing or disconnected information. You know, when you're programming variable images and things like that, you've got to be calling in the right image. And just a typo can cause problems. So we really need to make sure that the software helps us find those errors before we're starting to output proofs. And then, you know, lastly, send your customer a sample of each version of the proof. Your proofs are only as good as their data. And you may not find data errors, but sometimes they will. Just depends on how closely they're looking and obviously which random sampling records we selected, if they happen to have any errors in them or not. So we've covered a lot. So let's kind of look at what we've covered. Basically, the more you know about me, if I'm your customer, the better you can target what I want. When I get an offer in the mail for a product or a service that I use or would like to try, I respond to it. Sending me coupons for baby diapers, well, that's not going to work. All my children are now adults, so I don't need any diapers. But the more targeted the offer, the better the response rate is going to be. So your customers are going to be happy when we can help them make more money and or make more donations if you're working with nonprofits. It also helps to keep the mail out of the trash for future offers. So if you're sending something to somebody that's relevant and really important to them, or useful to them, I should say, then they're going to use it and they'll be looking forward to your next piece. So keep that in mind. And if you sent me something useful in the past, I'm more likely to pay attention to what you're sending me now. So use the data that you have for your direct mail, kind of like Amazon does in your shopping cart, right? Where they make suggestions based on what you bought and what others bought. So you might consider buying what other people bought. This really provides an upsell opportunity for your customer so they can capture even more sales based off of that one direct mail. And really the data is the key to effective personalization. The more data you have, the better off you are, as long as the list is continually cleaned and kept up to date. And we really haven't, focused on clean data at all, but with all of the options out there now between NCOA and deceased processing and even, more complex move update besides NCOA, all of those options can help you keep that data up to date for your customer and make sure that the people they want to be getting the pieces are actually getting them. And not only by helping them do that, you are, selling another piece of the pie to them, but you're also adding value to them because you're stripping off anybody that they don't need to be sending to. You must maintain strict quality control when getting hyper-personal. Check, and recheck the job files as you create them and as you print them. We like to make them into PDFs so that we can look through them and just double check everything before we send it off to the printer. It also allows us to, head off any errors in transferring of information. So if we were spooling directly to the printer rather than making PDFs, there's a chance that something goes wrong with the data in the transfer. So PDFs help us keep all of that quality that we like to maintain. And don't forget to track your efforts. And if you can't track it because your customer is holding all of the cards, ask them after the fact what the results were so that you can maintain that information with them. And you can use that when you're talking to future customers, when you're trying to sell them stuff. Hey, so-and-so did this and they got this much lift. Building up on what you're already doing creates success for everybody, really. Okay, so now let's talk about the fun stuff. So lastly, we're going to talk about CCPA. That's the California Consumer Protection Act, right? And it's making a lot of companies nervous, us included. It goes into effect in January of 2020. And what is it? Basically, the main goal of the law is to regulate the collection and sale of personally identifiable consumer data to third parties and service providers. Personal information covers any information that can be associated with an individual. Therefore, when we're just working with a mailing list that has a name and address, it still counts for us. What are the fines? The penalty for each individual violation is $2,500 if unintentional and $7,500 if intentional. Businesses have 30 days to fix alleged violations after they've been notified of non-compliance. Scary stuff. So, who does the CCPA apply to? If you fall into either category A or category B on this slide. So A, you are a for-profit business, you collect California consumers' personal information, or such information is collected on your behalf, and determine the purposes and means of processing California consumers' personal information. And you do business in the state of California. And you have to meet one of the following criteria. You have at least $25 million in annual gross revenue. You buy, sell, share, and or receive personal information of at least 50,000 California consumers, households, or devices per year. So in our case, we're receiving that information from our customers. 3, you derive at least 50% of your annual revenue from selling California consumers information. Now keep in mind, you only have to meet one of those 3 portions, not all 3. And then finally, if you don't fall in A, you might fall into B. And B is you control or are controlled by an entity that meets the above criteria and shares common branding with that entity. So, really, in order to find out how this directly affects your customer or your company, you need to speak with a lawyer or somebody that's familiar with how California is going to be enforcing this law. It's starting in California, but realistically, it's really going to spread to other states. Consumers are really concerned about privacy and what's going on with their data, especially with all the breaches and everything lately. So we're all going to have to figure out what this means for our companies and how we can comply with it. So on that glorious note, does anybody have any questions?
Well, Summer, I don't see anything in the inbox over here, but I've got an observation that really the CCPA does not just apply to California companies. If you're a company on the East Coast who's doing business with a client, and that client happens to have a volume of California customers that would meet with the criteria that were on the list, then they'd have to know what's going on and what their liabilities and responsibilities are under the state law for a country, for a company, for a state across the country from them.
That is very true. If you're processing more than 50,000 California addresses in a year, which I would think most companies probably are, then you're going to fall into the category of having to deal with this.
And so it's important for companies, anybody who's listening today, no matter where you are in the country, to really begin to figure out what your exposure is under this law. And as you mentioned, there are, last I heard, there were something like 16 or 18 other states, including the usual suspects like New York and Massachusetts, who were looking into similar state regulations to what the CCPA is. And of course, as with state tax laws, at some point, if enough states do this, you're going to have the same hodgepodge of variable requirements to face across a variety of states in which you may do business.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah. And the other thing, could you talk a little bit about how you have or haven't integrated informed delivery campaigns into the personalization you've been doing?
Oh, sure. So with informed delivery, when you are working with a customer that is working with consumers or residents, not other businesses, so a B2C type situation, and you're wanting to reach out to them digitally as well as with direct mail, informed delivery allows you to send out that image via email through the Postal Service that they can then include a website or a link that they can go to actually make that purchase or whatever it is you're asking them to do with your call to action before they even receive the mail piece, because it's coming in their mailbox soon. So it gives you an extra opportunity to kind of get in front of them and say, hey, take care of this now or jump on this offer now. We haven't actually processed any informed delivery campaigns yet, but we're looking at doing that because of the promotion that's going on. Customers can save some money on postage and try out something new. So we have a lot of customers that are considering it for sure.
That's good. Now, the other thing, when you were talking about, making sure that you have all the elements of the personalized piece correct, is what happens if you have a multi-item piece and you have to do two-way, three-way, four-way, five-way match, using an inserter and so forth. How does that complexity to get dealt with?
So that's when you're going to want smart inserters that have cameras so that they're reading barcodes that you're printing on pieces as you're creating them, so that it can make sure that, page 1 of the letter, page 2 of the letter, this reply card, and any other, personalized inserts that are in there are all going to the right person and they're going into the right envelope. The camera systems take images of everything, and there are even reports and things that you can print off if you have a client that wants you to guarantee that the matching is correct. Say you're working with financial information or HIPAA or something like that, and you have to be able to prove that you've done everything correctly. There are reporting mechanisms that you can get off of the machines to make sure that the matching is correct.
Okay, because I know I've seen situations in the past where the mail producer really has to pay a lot of attention to making sure all those pieces go together in the right sequence. Otherwise, Sally gets something which is meant for Joe, and that's just not good.
Yeah, especially if you're dealing with HIPAA or something like that, because that's a legal requirement. You're financially on the hook for any information that you disclose. Right.
Now, one thing that I get here that really annoys me is pre-filled forms. So if it's for a credit card or if it's for insurance, I'll get this thing filled out, with my name and an account number and blah, blah, blah already. So could you comment on how that level of personalization, is received by recipients and how that in turn ties into CCPA?
So when you're pre-populating forms, to a large extent, in other words, most of the form is filled out, you're doing it because you think, oh, we're making it easier on them. All they have to do is sign. But in a lot of cases, it kind of creeps people out, depending on what it is you're pre-filling in for them. In your example of credit card stuff, is that information that I want that company to know? Maybe not, depending on how I feel about all of that. It can be a little big brotherish, and that can make people a little nervous. So our rule of thumb when we're talking to customers about doing personalization and variable is just to make sure that the information that you're putting out there is relevant to your offer and is something that's needed to be there. So is it enhancing what you're trying to say, or is it going to creep somebody out? In a lot of cases, I think we go a little too far and we end up creeping people out when we didn't really need to. It's more important that they follow through on our call to action than it is that we prove that we know that they have a 2-year-old with brown hair and blue eyes. That's a little creepy.
Who needs a credit card?
Right. And then, for CCPA, the more information that we're, storing and using and providing, that can start to become an issue, because really what CCPA is it's allowing people to go to companies and say, delete my information. I don't want you to have any of my information. And what that can mean is that, all of this great personalized marketing that we're doing, we may not have the data anymore to do it if enough people, say, hey, delete my information. And, in talking with a lot of people here in California about this, we don't really expect a lot of people to jump on this and be like, delete my information, because people realize that by companies having some of their information, that they get something out of it. So for instance, when I give Facebook my information, I get this, this, and this. A lot of companies give you value for your information. So it just depends on where they fall on that scale of, is this important to me that you have my information so I get X, Y, Z? Or do I not really care about your company and I just want you to delete my information?
Right. And of course, nowadays, because people are concerned about, for example, credit card theft, if you get a personalized form in the mail, you don't feel comfortable just tossing it. You have to shred it to make sure nobody gets this, and you suddenly find yourself with 12 American Express cards. Again, it's like many things, I imagine. You have to kind of balance concerns over privacy with a good amount of marketing savvy. When you see ads for beer, for example, it always says at the bottom, drink responsibly. So maybe we need to remember that we need to personalize responsibly in that regard.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So let's see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions in the inbox here from anybody. So I guess we've at least given them enough to think about. The one thing I want to make sure everyone remembers is that we will make available a recording of the session later on, through our site. And there is a handout available too, a PDF. And using one of those tools, you can contact Summer and get more information about what she's talked about today. Ask her, pick her brain, find out what's going on, what she's doing in different situations, and make sure that you get the benefit from today's webinar that you were looking for. So with all that having been said, I don't see anything out here in terms of questions, so I think everybody's pretty satisfied. I want to thank everybody who called in today for doing so, for participating in the webinar. And I want to particularly thank Summer for taking time out of her morning, because it's morning for her out there on the West Coast, to talk to all of us. And we really appreciate the things that she shared with us. It's a great presentation, a lot of good information, and good things to make us all think about personalization in direct mail pieces. So with all that in mind, thanks to Michelle, too, for being the unseen person, making sure all the lights stay on and the machinery works. And again, thanks to Summer. Thanks to all of you. We hope to see you again next month for our next webinar. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.